And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. And I'm here with us, and Kris is already here. And last time we had a really interesting discussion about some of the metaphors of moving, as well as some information about worry and how fear affects our movements and a little bit of some techniques to have different ways to look at that so we can have smooth transitions. And so, Kris, welcome back, and maybe we can build on some of that again.
Indeed. An interesting factor involved in all of this is a certain level of confidence. So, for instance, many people may think, well, it doesn't work for me. It works for everyone else, but just not for me. I am the one singled out being in the universe. It will not work because you may not have the confidence to assert to yourself that your desires and you are both valid and worthwhile. So, therefore, you literally cut yourself off from incredible opportunities and you retreat into a little mental and physical space because, of course, living and having a happy life is for everyone else but for you. But once you begin to cross that threshold, once you become daring enough and realize that enough is enough, I want to be happy too. I want to feel that fulfillment. I want to be confident enough in myself that I can enjoy life. When you make certain decisions along that line, then you begin the trusting process. And it does have to do with a certain level of confidence. But you may say, well, I have no confidence. We can tell you that you do, but you are suppressing it. Otherwise, you would not be here. So,
Yeah,
in that way, even the slightest amount of confidence can brighten a gloomy vision of your future. So, take advantage of it, build on it. The slightest little successes, bank on that. Do not even consider that perhaps once you had a failure. So, therefore, my whole life is a failure. That is literally nonsense. Just because you narrow your vision to focus only on the one or two failures you had in your whole life, and failures is a very, very subjective topic, you therefore blind yourself to all the successes you have had. We have given this example before. If your child or your children, as they learn to crawl and then perhaps try to stand up, how many times did they fall? Dozens, if not hundreds of times, until they got the knack of standing and then begin to walk and run. And then they find the kitchen cupboards. But they started by falling. So falling is not a failure, it is an opportunity to get back up. And when you get back up, you, of course, strengthen yourself. Does that make some sense to you?
it does. And yeah, you use the word to reframe that in another episode, course corrections. So I like that too.
Indeed. And this is also what babies will do. They will recognize some of the things that made them fall, perhaps trip, fall, and they will pick themselves up and they will try again and again, even if they are super frustrated, which may even encourage them more Because when a baby is frustrated, they will surely let you know. And they will let themselves and everyone else know that they're going to try and try again. In many respects, babies sometimes express more courage than adults who are even too afraid to take some kind of risk to better their living situation in case they have a failure or they are even judged. Babies do not care if you laugh at them, that might spur them on more because they fall. It's like, I will show you. I will get up. I will run and I'll empty that damn cupboard.
Yep, that's true. I've watched that happen. Mm-hmm.
So the idea is to keep at it. You are familiar with the series of books, Chicken Soup for the Soul?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know those.
They were rejected well over 100 times before a small publisher said, yes, we can, but you pay the printing. We'll distribute. That's all it took. Even though they were rejected well over 100 times. And now they are a worldwide phenomenon. There have been all manner of different kinds of chicken soup. Even J.K. Rowling's was rejected. Stephen King was rejected. Many others were rejected. So it would appear that your world would have been very, very different indeed if these particular authors had said, well, that's it. I am done. This one publisher rejected me. What is the point of continuing? We are done. No chicken soup for the soul for your species. No Harry Potter. No Stephen King. Your world would indeed be different. The pyramids themselves, do you think they just sprung up overnight? The great works of the Roman Empire, the way they created their own unique cement, which allows buildings to still stand well over 2,000 years after they were built, that took practice. They would likely have had dozens, if not hundreds of failures themselves to get the combination of their particularly unique cement just right. So failure is a necessary part of success. It is an opportunity to understand and trust the process more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's a little jovial, but just wondering if babies are smarter than us adults in some ways. So
they do not have all of the limitations and self-imposed strictures that you as adults have put upon yourselves. Babies don't care. They have that attitude that says, I'm going to keep trying. Whether you like it or not, I will do it. And the more you restrict them, what do? They push and push because they do not like certain kinds of boundaries that restrict their creative energy. So in some respects, yes. Now, if as adults you recaptured that sense of wonder about discovering the whole world around you, instead of being jaded, you would rediscover your own potential and grow into it 10 times as much as what you have now.
Yeah, Chris, I was thinking of, somebody like an Einstein or Tesla or, a great inventor. It seems like they, in order to make something like that, they do recapture a kind of childlike sense of play with what they're doing.
Indeed, they have to see the world in a way they've never considered it before. And that vision is like that of a newborn. What is it that I am looking at, and how can I understand it in a different way? So it does require a certain childlike attitude. And everyone still has this capacity, but not everyone. Or we rather would say, but too many people believe they must be adults. And yes, you are correct. In fact, if more of this kind of open ended inquisitiveness, creativity, and curiosity was allowed, you would likely have many, many more Einsteins, Teslas, Newtons, Galileos, and so many others who did not abide by pack rule.
Oh, and I want to voice this, but it's a little bit difficult. I think it's simple. Um, I think there's another layer, Chris, of learning too, in that I know in my own example, earlier, perhaps in my 20s, I set about learning and trying to only learn using the intellect. And I think that's pretty common. And it felt very kind of forced. But something clicked then over the next decade where I felt like I started learning using and pairing that with intuitions. And it seemed like there was an acceleration in that ability to play and learn that restored.
Might we share a little secret?
Yeah, I was hoping you would.
No. Utilizing the intellect is a great thing indeed. There's nothing wrong with it. But do not compare the intellect with intelligence. Intelligence kicks in when you make proper use of the imagination, your creativity, your intuitions, insightfulness, and so on. That's when intelligence wakes up. It discovers yourself, discovers other dimensions to your being, into your reality, and then things really begin to move. So just because you use the intellect does not necessarily make someone most intelligent. So we would just like you to take that into consideration. And then when you awaken those other faculties, then you are functioning perhaps at a higher level, for lack of a better word, in a manner that is more innate to the human being than strictly trying to explain and understand everything through the use of the intellect. And again, we want to make certain there's nothing wrong with the intellect, but combine it with intelligence and you maximize your output and your internal experiences. So it is a very, very different kind of scenario here.
Well, and I think one of the challenges maybe viewers might have, and I know I was having, was the intellect and intelligence were the same thing, but using that my own example in evolution and your explanation there, intelligence is something different, and I think that'll be eye opening for a lot of the viewers.
Indeed. In fact, you may go to schooling for dozens or even more years. Cram your mind full of facts, full of details, full of information. Does not necessarily mean that you are specifically more intelligent. It simply means that your intellect has been crammed full of information. It kicks in at a higher degree when you begin to utilize how to apply that knowledge with the use of your imagination, your feelings and emotions. And even your Albert Einstein had a great regard for the imagination because it is what allowed him to then use the information he had to come up with the various theories and perceptions and insights that he shared with humanity. So in this way, he utilized his intelligence, not just his intellect.
Well, it's interesting in our way of life. I think I found that a lot of people find that maybe later in their life, as they age a little bit.
Indeed. That is, even according to your own statistics, you can be very, very active in various different ways when you are younger. As you begin to experience more rotations around your solar planet, your star, then it is as if a different part of you begins to awaken. It is the part of you that has reflected on 20, 30, 40 plus years of activities and suddenly starts putting the puzzle pieces into a different order. It starts to see the world differently than what you were told it was supposed to be. And what you might have considered happiness due to certain conditions, now you reflect on that as well. And you see, for most people, that happiness does not depend on circumstance or conditions. It is a completely different ballgame, just like intellect and intelligence. So as you mature, in fact, even your own statistics will show that the most productive parts of your life are not specifically when you are young or slightly older, but when you are older. So that is something to reflect upon, certainly. It gives food for thought. Now, how is the timing?
Yeah, I think we're getting towards the end of this one too, within a minute or
Indeed.
so.
Then do consider that human experience is complex. Doesn't mean it's complicated. The only complicated aspects come from when human beings complicate their own situations with perhaps dramatization and all sorts of limiting belief structures. But you can definitely easily see yourself out of your own psychological and mental straitjackets and literally experience the kind of freedom you may only have dreamt about, but perhaps always thought it's good for everyone else, just not for me. So, with that, we thank you for your lovely consideration and do enjoy the life. This is what it's all about.
All right, sounds like a plan. Thanks, Kris.
Indeed. And we return Joseph to you.